I knew something was off before I finished my coffee. I always drink it standing by the sink, phone propped against the dish soap, ESPN on mute, letting last night's scores crawl by like I'm studying a stock ticker I don't own. I'm a maintenance tech at the mall off Route 11. 34, 2 past due bills tacked under a magnet shaped like a crab, and a situationship with a woman in 3B who runs the daycare on Willow. My mornings are predictable in a way that usually calms me down. Today the calm felt fake, like the set of a show that forgot to build the walls behind the camera. On the street outside my apartment, I could hear more coughing than traffic. A deep, dry kind that doesn't stop. I cracked the window, and the air already smelled like wet pennies, which made no sense because it hadn't rained. Down by the corner store, a military van, green, boxy, too clean, was parked half up on the curb. No one inside, no hazard lights. It had been there when I took the trash out last night, still there now. And in our neighborhood, anything that doesn't belong gets noticed within minutes because the Homeowners Association Facebook page turns into a trial. Nothing on Facebook about it, though. Just a thread about seasonal wreaths and an argument about whether the pool needs lifeguards after Labor Day. The van sat there anyway, quiet, patient, like it knew something I didn't. I told myself I was just tired and went through the routine. I fed Jess's fish. Jess is 3B, and the fish is mine now because she's on a break from responsibility, and watered the spider plant that hates me. I pulled on my work polo with my name patch mat, and my steel-toe boots, and patted my back pocket, wallet, phone, the picture of my kid that I keep even though I don't see him enough. I texted Jess, "You up?" She usually sends a blurry photo from bed with her hair all over the place. 3 bubbles popped up like she started to type and change her mind. Then nothing. On the drive to the mall, something kept catching in my peripheral vision. Not cars. Movement at the edges of lawns. Stupid little twitches you only notice if you're already on edge. A sprinkler rotating in the wrong rhythm. A plastic bag in a hedge that didn't flap with the wind, so much as lean away when I looked at it. I passed Coach's diner, and the parking lot was full, but through the windows most of the heads were turned toward the door, not the tables, and nobody was eating. At the red light outside the middle school, a kid stood on the sidewalk alone in a pajama top, bare feet black with dust, looking at the sky like he was counting. He wasn't crying. He wasn't moving. The crossing guard talked into a walkie that wasn't on. At the mall, the west entrance doors were smeared with something that wasn't grease. I know grease. This was darker, tackier. I wiped one section with a rag, and it left a clean crescent and a metallic smell that hit the back of my throat. The security guy, Paul, came around the corner with a clipboard and a face like he'd slept in his car. "You see the van?" he asked, before good morning. "We meant the military one." "Yeah," I said. "They don't leave those sitting unless they're moving people," he said to me, but mostly to the air, like he was trying out sentences. He kept walking. I could see he had a bandage under his sleeve near his wrist, and it was seeping through. I tried to clock in. The time clock app spun and said no network. Free Wi-Fi still worked, which is how you lose a morning on Reddit. But the mall radios were full of static, and the landline in the back office just clicked when I lifted it. My boss texted in the group chat, "Stay put, guys. Power company says rolling outages. Don't do anything dangerous." The last part made me laugh, then not. Something dangerous is always cheaper than something delayed. By 9, the mall should hum. Today it hummed wrong. Half the stores never raised their gates. The ones that did kept the lights low like they were trying to save the bulbs. People walked past each other without seeing. A woman in a blue dress stood absolutely still in front of Yankee Candle with her keys hanging from her hand by the store reward tag. Her phone lay face down on the tile, and it buzzed, and she didn't look at it. Down by the food court, the smoothie place blender ran without anything in it. A kid threw up in a Chipotle bag, and his dad finished paying before he grabbed the kid's shoulder. On one of the TV kiosks, the morning news anchor talked with that smile they use when they're softening a punch, and the lower third kept switching. "Stay calm, technical difficulties, shelter I in," and then back to a mattress sale. I tried to call my ex to check on our son. Straight to voicemail. I texted my mom in Florida. "How's everything?" She sent a thumbs up and a photo of the weather radar. Always the weather. No one else in the group chat answered. A buddy from the VA texted, "You still in town?" And I typed, "Yeah," and watched it say delivered, then not read. The coughing in the mall got louder, then stopped all at once like someone pressed mute. When it came back, it was staggered, not coordinated, like a dozen different rooms in a house all had a clock, and none were set the same. Paul came past again, faster. "We're closing early if corporate approves," he said. "If they don't approve?" I asked. He looked at me, really looked. "Then we're closing early," he said. That's when I saw the first thing I know I saw, and still can't explain cleanly. In front of the old Sears, there's a giant promotional mirror, one of those wavy carnival ones a mall marketing firm thought would be fun for selfies. If you stand at the right angle, it reflects a long stretch of corridor and the shoe store across. I was walking toward it, and my reflection matched my steps because physics is reliable. And then mine stopped, and the other me kept walking for 2 seconds, just enough for my stomach to dip like a roller coaster. He looked over his shoulder the wrong way, then caught up with me as if nothing happened. I told myself it was the slow refresh rate of the overhead lights or a hidden camera playing back a loop. I needed it to be something with a name. On my way back to the office to pretend to check breakers, I cut through the side hall by the daycare play space we rent on weekends. Jess runs that program. I was going to text her, "You okay?" again, and add a dumb emoji. Her door was cracked an inch. Everyone knows you knock if the door is closed, or half the moms will rip your head off for unsafe vibes. I knocked. No answer. I nudged it with my boot. The room smelled like goldfish crackers and bleach and something else, a hot, sweet smell that made me think of my high school weight room when someone sprained a wrist. The lights were off, but the murky hallway glow got me far enough to see crayon drawings on the walls and a stack of tiny cots against the wall. Something tapped the window. Not rain, there wasn't any. A slow, deliberate finger tap. I crossed the carpet and looked out. Jess was outside on the little strip of landscaping between the daycare and the delivery road. Her hair was in that messy bun she does when she's working, and she had one sneaker on and one foot bare and dirty. She held her phone in her hand like a remote, but she wasn't looking at it. She was staring at the ground directly in front of her toes. Not down, not around, an exact spot. I tapped the glass back, quietly. She didn't react. Behind her, in the reflection of the glass, I saw movement across the delivery road, where the bushes make a thin fence between the mall and the back of the strip of doctors' offices. The movement didn't belong to one thing. It was like the shrubs were exhaling and inhaling in sections. I wanted to go out there, but I didn't want to be the idiot who becomes the reason a child goes to a funeral. I called her. Her phone lit in her hand, and the little face in the circle said Jess, and the ring vibrated the glass in my hand through the window. She didn't blink. The call went to voicemail, and I hung up before my voice could announce itself to whatever else might be listening. I decided I believed my gut more than the news or the silence, which is not how I usually operate. I'm the guy who keeps receipts and checks the water heater pilot twice. I went back to the office and grabbed a roll of duct tape, the door chocks, and the emergency radio from hurricane season. Static. I went to each entrance I could reach without crossing open space, and I threw the deadbolts, taped over the keypads, and slid wedges under the doors. I pulled the big magnetic mall closed power outage sign onto the glass. It felt stupid, and it felt right because those feelings can live together. On the way to the loading dock, I passed the break room and saw blood in a place there shouldn't be blood. A coffee cup lay on its side near the sink, and the brown river that should have been coffee turned red at the end. It smeared into the shape of a palm on the linoleum, too neat to be accidental. Above it, stuck to the paper towel dispenser, someone had left a Band-Aid wrapper and a sticky note with a phone number and the name Mitch Utilities. It wasn't Paul's bandage. His was wrapped with gauze. I stood and looked at that handprint until my brain started to try and match it to employees I knew, and I forced myself to stop. At the loading dock, the big exterior gate was down. Through the slats, I could see the military van again at the edge of the lot, still patient. Next to it now sat a regular pickup with the door open and the radio on, playing a preacher. The preacher said, "We are called to be still," and the part of my brain that catalogs small jokes for later wrote down, Not today. A warehouse guy from the shoe store, Corey, I think, stood near the soda machine, chewing. He swallowed and said, "They found something in the storm drains, man." I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. Like what? I asked. He looked at the bottom of the dock door instead of at me. Like hair, he said. Like fur. Like it moves. He rubbed his forearms, like he was cold even though we run warm back here. His sleeve rode up and there were scratches crisscrossing the skin, some thin, some torn wide, like he'd tried to yank his arm out of a hand. "You should clean those," I said, and as soon as the sentence left my mouth, I knew how dumb it sounded, like telling someone with a house fire to check their smoke detectors. I went back to the daycare room with a roll of black plastic we use for covering broken skylights. I cut strips and started taping over the inside of the windows. It made the room feel smaller and safer. I dragged a bookcase in front of the door and slid the bolt. I found the emergency snack bin, applesauce raisins, those flat granola bars you need good teeth to love, and dumped it into a tote. I stashed a step stool under the window because if I had to, I could hoist someone tiny out of it. The whole time I was moving, something outside kept tapping. Not at the glass, but at the metal frame around it, like it was learning the boundaries. My phone buzzed and I jumped so hard the tape snapped taut and bit my wrist. A text from an unknown number. "If you see movement outside, hide immediately." No punctuation. No link. Just that. Another text came through from my ex, hours late. "We're at my sister's. He's fine." An old photo of my son in last year's Halloween costume popped below it, like the phone was coughing up anything it could find that might calm me down. I typed back, "Stay inside. Don't look out the windows." I deleted the last sentence. It sounded crazy. I sent, "Stay inside." I peeked between the taped plastic and the glass. Jess was still there. Same posture, same bare foot, but she wasn't alone anymore. Across the delivery road, in the bushes, I realized the movement had resolved into shapes. Not people. Not animals. Think of a pile of laundry when a cat hides underneath and shifts one corner at a time. Now imagine you don't own a cat. The bushes bulged in small squares, like something was pushing through a grid. A humming started at the base of my teeth. Not a sound, but a pressure. Jess turned her head 1 degree toward the bushes, and then back to her spot on the ground. Her phone buzzed again in her hand. She didn't flinch. I wanted to shout her name. I wanted to run out there and yank her inside, and lock the door, and be the guy who did the right thing first for once. I put my hand on the bolt. The hallway motion sensor light clicked on behind me, and threw my shadow across the room and onto the window, and, as if responding to that dark shape, 3 distinct places in the bushes surged at the same time, fast, smooth, like a school of fish turning. My body made the decision my brain was going to argue with for the next hour. I slid the bolt back down and stepped away from the glass. I hate that about myself, and I also know I'm still here to hate it. The mall intercom sputtered on. Paul's voice came through, ragged. "If you're in the building, do not go outside. Repeat, do not go outside. Stay in an interior room away from glass. If you see movement outside, hide immediately." He coughed. The cough didn't stop. He covered the mic, forgot to take his finger off, and I heard him say to someone near him, "It's in the reflections." Then the speaker cut, and the humming in my teeth got louder. I backed into the playroom and knelt like I was about to pray, which I haven't done since boot camp when the chaplain had kind eyes, and I figured it couldn't hurt. I didn't pray. I counted breaths like the counselor taught me after Afghanistan when I told him the only time I felt okay was when everything else failed at the same time, because then at least I knew what to do. In 2-3, out 2-3-4, tape the last seam on the window, drag the bookcase tighter, put my back to the wall that faces the corridor, not the glass. Think small. Think immediate. Think doable. Think of my kid's Halloween costume. Think of Jess's fish. Think of the way the morning felt like a set, and how that means you can walk off one side if you know where the edge is. I didn't see the thing in the bushes. I didn't stick around long enough to learn the rules by getting one wrong. I made a choice that felt like a betrayal to every hero movie I've ever let teach me what bravery looks like, and I did it anyway. And when the tapping on the metal frame stopped and the humming dropped below hearing, when the hallway sensor light clicked off again, I realized two real things at once. Whatever is happening prefers we look for it, and I have to make this place into a bunker before the day finishes deciding what it wants to be. Paul's voice on the intercom died, and the room felt smaller. I kept thinking about Jess's bare foot and the way the bushes moved in squares. I told myself I'd wait 5 minutes and then decide. In the third minute, someone knocked on the daycare door. 3 quick taps, like a delivery driver trying to be polite. "Matt." It was Corey from the shoe store, voice thin. "Man, open up. It's me." "Say something only you would know," I said, and immediately felt stupid because I barely knew him. He laughed once, wrong. "I buy Mountain Dew from the machine at 9, noon, and 3. You always say I'll get kidney stones." That was true. He sounded out of breath. "It's in the hall," he whispered. "It follows light. Please." I slid the bookcase an inch, lifted the bolt, and cracked the door 2 fingers. He shoved hard and it hit my boot. "Whoa," I said and planted. He put his face in the gap. Sweat had washed dust into pale tracks. Close up, I could see the scratches on his arm weren't random. They were almost straight, parallel, like something combed him with wire. "Don't open it more," I said. He nodded too fast. Over his shoulder, the hallway lights flickered, and I watched our reflections stutter on the daycare's tiny one-way mirror panel that lets parents peek inside. My reflection held still, braced. His lagged and then snapped ahead like a buffering video. His eyes were on me, but in the reflection, his eyes were on the mirror. "Back up," I said. He didn't. He smiled with just his top teeth. "Please," he said, but it didn't sound like a word he meant, just a key he was trying in a lock. I pushed the door into his shoulder, and he made a sound that was almost a giggle. Something thin slid between the door and the frame. Not a hand. Something like fishing line, bright and wet, and it bit into the meat of my thumb before I knew it was there. I jerked back. The line snapped and flicked, and a drop of my blood hit the floor like a period at the end of a sentence. Corey's face changed fast. Shock came in, and his eyes matched his mouth for the first time today. "Oh, God," he said, and he stumbled backward and looked at his own hands like he'd never seen them. The hallway motion sensor caught him, and the light flared, and in that light something else took one step across the threshold of the hidden mirror's reflection and left a smear on the glass. Inside the mirror, not on the surface. I slammed the door, threw the bolt, dragged the bookcase back. My thumb burned like I grabbed a stovetop, not cut it. The skin around the slice went white. He pounded the door with his fist. "I'm me," he said, breathless and ashamed. "I'm me. I'm me. I'm me." Then softer through the wood. "Don't look at the glass." The fire alarm went off, a full shriek that rattled the cheap picture frames and woke every terrible instinct to stand up and move toward an exit. The sprinkler heads didn't trip, thank God, because water would have turned every surface into a mirror. The alarm didn't say evacuate like it has during drills. It just screamed. The intercom crackled, and a different voice than Paul's came through. Maybe corporate pumping audio from wherever they were. "Shelter in place. Do not use exterior doors. Avoid reflective surfaces." Then a recorded legal disclaimer kicked in like we were listening to hold music for the end of the world. The screaming alarm drew things. You could feel it. The humming in my teeth rose as if a truck were idling in the wall. The tapping at the window frame came back, quicker, like small fingers drumming before a song starts. I looked through the tape slit, couldn't help it. And Jess wasn't in the landscaping anymore. She was on the delivery road, standing dead center, facing the daycare window, barefoot planted, phone still in her right hand. Her left wrist was at a weird angle, like she'd pushed it through a fence. Her eyes were glassy with focus, and she mouthed a word without sound. It could have been help. It could have been look. I put my hand on the glass without thinking. She put hers up too, mirror perfect. But when my hand hit the tape, hers was half a second late. In the reflection of the glass, the delay was reversed. Little stupid details like that are the only handholds I had. My thumb throbbed. The skin around the cut had little pale bumps rising like frost under paint. The daycare walkie on the shelf popped. I didn't even know it had batteries. "Matt," Paul said. His voice was small now, like he'd stepped far away from the mic. If you're in a room that locks, stay. If you have to move, use dark halls. Cover any cuts. Do not let it see itself. It comes faster when it sees itself. He coughed a wet cough that ended in a wet sound. I'm by the security office. West stairwell is compromised. East service corridor looks okay-ish. The radio clicked and another voice muttered behind him. Don't say compromised, man, say blocked, the second voice said. People freak out. Then silence. I grabbed a roll of black trash bags, the duct tape, the tote of snacks, the emergency flashlight with the cracked lens. I tore bags into long strips and wrapped my head like an idiot turban because I suddenly hated my eyes being visible. I pulled the hoodie from the lost and found and shoved it on. I wrapped my bleeding thumb in 3 Band-Aids and duct tape until it looked like a cartoon. I wanted to leave, but the room was becoming a trap. The alarm, the movement outside, the mirrored one-way panel that now felt like a throat. I cracked the window and yelled without making a big silhouette. Jess. She flinched like the name tugged a thin string in her jaw. Come to the family entrance, I hissed. I'll meet you at the service hall door. Don't look at anything shiny. Her mouth made a shape. It might have been my name. She took 1 step toward the building. The bushes across the way surged in 3 places at once. I didn't stay to watch what came out of them. I slid the bolt, moved the bookcase enough to squeeze through, and opened the door into the empty hallway. The alarm made everything a blur. A coughing chorus rose from somewhere dark. I went low and fast, hugging the wall, keeping my eyes on the matte paint and the scuffs from 1,000 stroller wheels. The one-way mirror panel threw me a rim of my own face when I passed. I kept my head turned away like I was avoiding a fight. At the end of the hall, I hit the service corridor and almost ran into a woman and a little girl pressed into a shadow. The girl had a stuffed llama clutched under her armpit like it was paperwork. The mom's eyes were wide and flat. Are you maintenance? She asked, whispering like the hallway had rules. Yeah, I said, which today meant I will pretend to know what to do. Ava, she told her daughter, hold the nice man's shirt. Ava looked at my name patch. Hi, Matt, she said calmly, because kids are calm when they think adults are. We're going to the family entrance, I said. Don't look out any glass. The mom nodded too hard. My husband is at Dillard's, she said, because even now we explain ourselves to strangers. He said he'd come around. He said he saw something in a dressing room mirror. That wasn't him. She swallowed. He said he'd be right back. We kept to the service corridor, where the walls were raw drywall, and the only shine came from mop water on the floor. I stepped around puddles like they were mines. At one intersection, the floor-to-ceiling mirror from a closed salon leaned against the wall, half covered in packing blankets, the uncovered strip like a river. I told them to look at their shoes and counted our steps out loud over the alarm. A shadow moved in the mirror strip, not ours, a little too tall, head a little too long, and I put my hand on the blanket and let it fall the rest of the way, so we wouldn't have to know. Halfway to the family entrance, a man staggered out of a door marked electrical, shirt slick with sweat. He saw us, and his face broke like someone had finally arrived to relieve him from a shift he never wanted. Thank God, he said, and then his eyes went past me to the little girl, and something in the space between his pupils stretched like taffy, like you were watching it through heat. Don't look at them, I said, and my voice came out lower than I've ever heard it. He blinked fast, like he was trying to switch channels. I didn't mean to, he said. He reached toward us the way people reach for dropped glass. His hand shook. The mom pulled Ava behind me, and the llama squeaked against my belt buckle. He kept coming. My thumb burned so bad it felt like it was pulsing with the alarm. I stepped forward to meet him, because sometimes that's the only way to stop something from setting the tempo. Back in the room, I said, and put my palm on his chest. His shirt was damp and hot. In the reflection on a stainless steel fire extinguisher box to my left, my hand wasn't on his chest. It was on his jaw, and my fingers looked longer by one knuckle. He looked at the box before I could block it, and whatever was dragging his gaze around grabbed hold. He smiled with only the bottom teeth, the wrong way this time. You're helping, he said, and it sounded like he meant it. Then he leaned into my hand too far, like he could pour into my skin if he just committed. I shoved. He stumbled into the extinguisher box. The glass spidered. He fell to one knee, and his head snapped up as if someone yanked his hair. But no one did. He reached for me with both hands, and I did a thing I hate that I know how to do. I hit him right in the throat with the edge of my fist, because a drill instructor once said, if you ever need to make a point, that's the punctuation mark. He gagged. He fell. He tried to get up in 2 different directions at once, and his shoulder made a sound. The mirror in the box cracked the rest of the way, and a thin blackness bled along the lines like the crack was a vein. Don't look, I said to the mom, to Ava, to myself. I grabbed the man by the belt and dragged him into the electrical room and shut the door and propped a bucket against it, because sometimes you do theater, so your body will believe your mind. We ran. The family entrance door was ahead, that heavy one with the crash bar that opens to the delivery road and the small parking spot where moms with 3 kids can get a break. I didn't want to open it. I wanted to duct tape it and write closed and sit down. But Jess was out there, and I had already said I would. On 3, I told the mom. I push, you go, I hold. If you see movement outside, you hide immediately. She nodded. Ava held the llama's ear so tight the stitches creaked. I hit the bar and the door popped, and heat rolled in. Summer in the back lot. Oil and hot asphalt, and that too sweet smell. The delivery road looked wrong. Not because of monsters, but because of absence. No birds, no bugs, no trash skittering. The military van at the far edge had its back doors open now, and black plastic wrapped around something large inside, taped tight like a pallet. A preacher still talked somewhere from an open truck. Be not afraid, he said, and if he'd appeared I would have asked him how. Jess stood 10 feet to the right, exactly where I told her not to be, in the open, framed by the metal posts. She lifted her head when she saw me, and her face did that tell, the micro-relief, the tiny drop of her shoulders. That made my chest hurt. Then she lifted the phone like she was showing me a picture. On the screen was the front-facing camera view of me in the doorway, blurred by duct tape, and behind that tiny me, in the tiny daycare room reflection, something was standing that wasn't in the real room. Its head was bent like it was listening at the level of a child's ear. Don't, I said, but I was too late. I had looked at the screen. In the foam glass, my hood was back, and my eyes were too wide, and my mouth was open, and the thing behind me lifted its head, and we all felt the air change. Jess smiled tiny and wrong, and then real fear slammed into her face, like the moment of fight stops being tough talk. She looked down at her empty left hand like she'd expected to be holding something. It's heavy when you care, she said, and it sounded like it wasn't her idea to say it. Movement in the far bushes didn't look like leaves now. It came in straight lines that met on the asphalt and then separated like zebras crossing. A shape the size of a man but built from corners, no curves, stepped into the delivery road and then wasn't there when I blinked. That was the rule I learned in one breath. If I kept my eyes soft and looked past it, it stayed slow. If I tried to focus, it found me in that focus. Inside, I told the mom. She hesitated, looked for her husband even though he couldn't be here. Inside now, I said louder, and that made it real for her. She pulled Ava through the door, and the llama squeaked like it was alive. Jess took 1 step toward me, and the thing matched it in the opposite direction, like they were tethered. Drop the phone, I said. She looked at me like I'd asked for something offensive. Her thumb moved toward the volume button instead, like her muscle memory didn't have drop in it. Jess, I said, you know the fish is your fish now, right? The smile we used to have about that almost reached her eyes. She loosened. The phone slid from her hand and hit the asphalt face up, and the tiny me in the screen jerked like he'd been pushed. The glass spidered, and the image bled black at the edges. The square shoulder shape moved wrong in response, like a chess piece trying to take a diagonal. For the first time I saw something that could be called a feature. Not a face, but a place where faces might fit. My thumb burned so hard I thought I would pass out. It took a step without touching the ground between steps. Move, I said, and I grabbed Jess by the elbow and hauled her inside in the same motion I slammed the door. Metal hit metal, and I threw the bolt. The mom sobbed once loud, and clapped her hand over her mouth. Ava said politely, "You're bleeding," and pointed at my hand. "What's the rule, Ava?" I said, "To keep air flowing in my body. When you see movement outside, hide immediately," she recited, calm again, and I wanted to cry in a way I haven't since the night my son was born, because I've never loved a rule more. We ran the service corridor back toward interior rooms. Behind us, the delivery door boomed once, then again, not like fists, more like sound hitting. A light fixture exploded in front of us and showered plastic. We skidded past the salon mirror, still covered, and into the dim fork by security. Paul leaned against the jamb of his office, gray, sleeve soaked. He had his sidearm drawn, which I didn't even know he carried. "Good," he said when he saw us. Good, close." His eyes flicked down the hall behind us, and then up to the ceiling camera. In the CCTV monitor stacked beside him, a dozen mall corridors showed a dozen copies of us, a second behind, a second ahead, and in 3 of the feeds there were extra shadows that didn't belong to anyone. "We have to get to the cinema," he said. "No windows, heavy doors, projector glass is tempered, we cover it." He coughed into his elbow and came away with dark threads between his knuckles like spun sugar. He stared for a beat too long. "Don't touch that," I said. He nodded and rubbed a sleeve over his fingers like he could erase them. We moved as a group. 2 more people fell in with us near the arcade. A teenage kid in a mall hoodie with a bloody ear, and a custodian I know as Mrs. K, who has a grandson on the wrestling team. The alarm hiccuped and cut out. The silence was worse because you could hear our shoes and the small skittering, inside the walls or inside our heads. In front of the cinema, a mural made of shiny tiles reflected us like 1,000 little eyes. We all stopped and took the long way around through the dark party room where someone had left a birthday banner that read Congra, and then nothing. In the cinema lobby, the overheads were off and the popcorn machine glowed like a campfire. The projector windows up top threw rectangles of dull emergency light. The teenager said, "We can barricade the double doors to 4 and 5 with the soda racks." And I liked him immediately because he picked a plan that was about lifting and moving, not knowing or guessing. We pushed. We stacked. We ripped down the movie posters with their glass and slid them face down. The custodian found black paint in a back closet, prop stuff from a midnight premiere, and we rolled it on anything shiny with a foam roller like we were painting out the sky. 4 2-minute things were tasks. Tape this, move that, check hinges. For 2 minutes, human rules held. Ava ate a box of milk duds like pills. Jess sat on the sticky carpet and held her left wrist like she was trying to realign the bones. I wanted to ask her 100 questions, and I asked none because I could hear the thing we brought with us looking for us in the quiet. We had stared at it. It had our shape now. That was my realization. Not infection, but attention. It didn't need our bodies. It needed our notice. It moved fastest in the trail of our concern. Then the betrayal happened, and I wish it were someone else's fault, but it was mine. Mine because I wanted proof. On the security console by the ticket booth, a tablet sat running the mall's camera app. One feed showed the family entrance from outside. The military van's back doors were wide open, and the black wrap pallet inside had split. What was inside wasn't a body. It was a stack of mirrors face to face, blankets between them, taped into a block like people tape moving parts before a big trip. The top blanket had slid, and a corner of glass showed a thin slice of the doorway. And in that thin slice I saw the version of us that had stayed in the daycare and died there. Jess on her knees. Me at the window. A child's small hand reaching under the door, and something long wrapping around it. It wasn't real in the real lot. It was real in the glass. I leaned in because you always lean in at the wrong second when the answer is almost visible. The projector glass behind us flashed once with a ripple like a stone dropped in a pond. Only the pond was inside the thick pane. The humming in my teeth became a chord. The custodian said, "Don't," and I had already done it. I had given a road in. The lobby's polished tile pulled a copy of the ceiling, and on that reflected ceiling something crawled fast, straight at us, while the real ceiling stayed empty. I grabbed the black paint roller and threw it across the tile, and it skidded, left a smear that broke the crawling thing into 2 smaller, quicker parts. which made it worse. The teenager yelled and shoved the soda rack tighter, and one of the bottles burst and sprayed fizz across the floor, making 10,000 little round mirrors. The two quick things became 10. They circled where Ava stood because she was the smallest and most looked at, and I learned the rule that will live in my spine. What you protect, it finds. Look at me, I said to Ava, louder than I should in a place where loud means target. Right here. I pointed to my forehead like a kid's game. She did, disciplined and brave in a way that made me want to burn down the world, that made her need to be. The 10 small reflections slowed because I wasn't feeding them my eyeballs. Jess stood up, swayed, and did the smartest thing in the room. She tossed her phone face down, so there was one less trap. Paul staggered and went to one knee. He was breathing wet again. He turned his gun toward the projector window because he had a too simple rule. Shoot the thing. And I grabbed his wrist. Don't, I said. It wants the glass broken. He looked at me like he was trying to pick which voice in his head to trust. I'm supposed to be the guy who shoots, he said. Today it's different, I said, and that was the whole story of everything now. He nodded once, and then his eyes rolled, and he pitched forward. The thread-like stuff between his fingers, the spun sugar look, had crept up his wrist like ivy, pale and glistening, and it pulsed with his pulse. It wasn't infection. It was duplication, like his body had started printing another layer of him on top. Cut it, he said calmly, the way men say pull the plug in hospital shows. He held out his arm, and I didn't think. I grabbed the box cutter from my belt and sliced along the pale layer where it peeled from his skin. Blood came, real and hot. He didn't yell. He breathed out through his nose, and I could have loved him like a brother for that alone. The fake layer shriveled like plastic in a flame and melted into the grout line between tiles, and the grout line darkened and ran toward the nearest reflection. We stamped it out like a snake. A sound like 100 fingernails dragged over screen doors came from the hallway. A child cried a long, true cry in one of the theaters, and every adult in the lobby flinched at the same time because we are dogs to that bell. Mrs. K made the sign of the cross. Her hand shook. The teen said, I'll go. And I said, no, you stay with them. And I took a broom handle like a spear and a roll of tape like a shield because I don't carry anything else. I went into Theater 4 with the broom in my bad hand and my heart loud. The movie never started, so the room was gray. Rows of seats like neat teeth. In the flicker from emergency lights, I could see a man kneeling 5 rows down, holding something under the seat, whispering, it's okay, it's okay. And the thing under the seat repeated it exactly. Same intonation, with a half-second delay, like an echo you didn't earn. Sir, I said, look at me. He looked up, and in his eyes was the look of someone who knows he's going to have to choose between 2 bad things. She's stuck, he said, and the thing under the seat said it too. She's stuck. And then a hand that was very much a hand reached up through the seat gap and grabbed my broom, and it had too many knuckles. It yanked hard. I went with it instead of fighting it, a trick from bar fights and alleyways. I let the broom go all the way and then pulled suddenly back, and the extra knuckle hand slammed into the seat frame and made a noise that I felt more than heard. I brought the box cutter down on the hand, not chopping but scoring, like I was cutting carpet so it would tear. It tore. The hand split into thin strands and snapped back, and the man yanked a real child up by her armpits, and she came free with gum in her hair and blood on her knee, and I found myself laughing, because when this is over, if it's ever over, I will brag that I did one completely normal dad thing inside hell. We backed out, eyes on the aisles, and when we hit the lobby again, the projector glass flashed one more time, like a camera taking a picture. A long crack ran from corner to corner. We have to go, I said, because my failure had scheduled the rest of our day for us. We can't hold this. And saying it hurt Paul's pride and mine and every person who believes in buildings and locks. Where? The mom asked. I looked past her shoulder at the mall map. The You Are Here star, the little colored blocks. In my head I saw the town. I saw the underpass that always floods and the church with the red door and the middle school where the kids stared at the sky and the mall off Route 11 that we've all said we hate and still use. The cemetery, I said, because my brain is a collage, and my grandfather once told me the only calm place on tornado day was the cemetery. Trees low, stones heavy, no glass, no greed. Or the high school gym. Mrs. K said practical. No windows, mats to cover anything shiny. The kid said, the bus depot, old brick, bathrooms with paper over the mirrors for Halloween pranks. It didn't matter where, only that it was not here, because here knew our names. We packed what mattered in 30 seconds. Water, snacks, the paint roller, duct tape, a hoodie for the kid. I took a movie usher's flashlight with the cone cap because it cast a dull circle, not a bright spear. Jess stood next to me, close in that way that makes both people stronger when you've decided together to be brave enough for one more minute. She touched the back of my hand, the bandaged one. You came, she said, soft, amazed, like it wasn't a foregone thing with me. I got lucky, I said. No, she said, steady. You chose. We pushed into the hallway, and I didn't look at any glass. We moved in a pack, one person at the front, one at the back. All of us, with our chins tucked like boxers. The mall's emergency lights guttered, and then steadied, and left everything the color of a hospital at night. Somewhere down the way a gate fell, and the metal rattled for a long time after, like even the sound didn't want to stop. At the family entrance, we did not open the door that had our attention on it. We took the service stairs up and over and down to the east loading dock, where the rubber bumpers make the wall matte, and the only shine is where tires hit. I put my palm on the final crash bar and felt the outside like heat on a griddle. I turned to them and said what I would want someone to say to me. We go fast, I said. We don't look at windows or phones or puddles. If you see movement outside, you hide immediately. Hiding means behind something dull and stupid, not cool and reflective. If someone drops, we pick them up by the belt. If someone is gone, we don't go back to the mirror to check how gone. We keep moving until we find a place with rules we can understand. I pushed the bar, and we stepped into a world that looked like ours, but ran on something else. The sky was too flat. The sound was wrong, no bugs, no hum of transformers, just wind in straight lines. The military van sat with its back open like a mouth, and inside the stack of sandwich mirrors had slid more, and I saw thin white handprints on the inner glass that didn't match any hands I've held. The preacher's voice finally ended with, and all the people said, and there was no amen. We crossed the lot in a crouch, using the dull shadow of the dumpsters like the shade of an oak. My thumb hurt, my ribs hurt. My head was clear in the way it only is when I am in a moment that writes itself. Behind us, inside the mall, something found the projector glass and learned a new way to be fast. It blew through the lobby, a wind only the tile felt, and when it hit the door we'd left it pushed once, twice, and then stopped like it was listening for where we put our attention next. We gave it nothing. We didn't look back. We hit the far stair that leads to the employee lot, the one that's been missing 2 bolts for a year, and I've been meaning to fix it. I put my foot where the bolt should be, and it held, and I took that as the last favor the old rules were going to give me today. We stepped into the employee lot, and the world passed it, and that was the line. I wasn't hopeful, and I wasn't doomed. I smelled cut grass from somewhere unbroken, and I smelled the sweet hot from what was breaking, and I felt the people behind me trusting me for 30 more seconds. I squared my shoulders and looked at nothing shiny, and kept moving, because the rules had changed, and I had too. We ran until our breath tore at our throats. The parking lot behind the mall felt like a frying pan, shimmering with heat and silence. Paul kept pace even though he was pale and clutching his arm. Jess was at my shoulder, Ava's mom just behind me with the girl tucked under her arm like a football. Every step was a fight not to look sideways. Every window, every car mirror, every puddle could be a trap. I aimed us toward the old service road that cut behind the strip mall and ran toward the highway. The military van stayed behind, doors open, that broken block of mirrors staring at the sky. Nothing chased us yet. Maybe the thing didn't know how to cross into full sun. Maybe it just liked the game better when we looked back. Left here, Mrs. K said, pointing to the side road behind the big lots. Her voice was hoarse but steady. Brick walls. Fewer windows. We cut between dumpsters and hit the cracked blacktop. The air here smelled like tar and grass clippings. Jess stumbled once, and I grabbed her elbow. "I'm fine," she said automatically. Her face said otherwise, sweat, gray lips, but her eyes were clear. She looked at me long enough to make me feel seen, and then looked away fast like she remembered the rules. Don't feed it attention. Paul wheezed and finally slowed. "Arm's bad," he said. The pale new layer was climbing again from the cut site, spiderwebbing up his wrist. "Not deep enough." "Sit," I said, and he half collapsed against the side of an abandoned delivery truck. The truck's window was shattered. Thank God. Nothing left to reflect. I pulled the bandage off and saw the thin, white threads pushing out of his skin, like roots looking for soil. He didn't flinch, just looked at me with quiet resignation. "Cut higher," he said. "I'm not a medic." "You're all we've got." I wrapped a length of duct tape above his elbow and pulled it until he hissed. Jess crouched opposite me and pulled out the box cutter. Her hand shook, but she locked eyes with Paul and said, "Look at me." He did. She sliced where the threads met his skin, and they recoiled like worms in salt, melting back into nothing. He grunted, but didn't scream. We wrapped him again, tight, with a strip of torn hoodie. Color came back to his face slowly. He smiled at Jess, quick and tired. "Tougher than you look," he said. She shrugged. "Daycare," she said. "You learn." The sound of footsteps behind us snapped every head around. The teen, his name turned out to be Mason, pointed. Down the lot, 2 people were running flat out, waving arms. They were alive, human, and behind them, the air shimmered like heat but wrong, angles bending as if glass was hanging invisibly. We didn't think. We bolted toward the next cover, a cinder block storage shed with one steel door. We crammed in. It smelled of gasoline and paint. We slammed the door, and Jess found the latch. The 2 newcomers collapsed just inside, sobbing. One was a young guy in a food court apron, the other an older woman in a mall walker's tracksuit. The air outside went still, but through the door's thin seam we saw the shimmer pause and tilt, like an animal sniffing. The older woman kept muttering, "Don't look, don't look," over and over. The young guy had a foam-clutched white knuckle in his hand, the screen cracked but alive. He looked down at it without thinking. "No," I barked and smacked it from his hands. It clattered across the concrete, screen up, and for a heartbeat the phone's camera feed caught the doorway behind us. And there it was, a perfect copy of our steel door, except it already had a black stain blooming across it like ink and water. I kicked the phone face down, hard hammering. Mason swore under his breath. "Every time we look, we build it." "That's the rule," I said, and hearing it out loud made it feel almost manageable. "Don't feed it sight." We waited, pressed together, sweat and paint fumes and shallow breaths. Something brushed the outside of the door, a long whisper of movement. Then silence. Paul leaned his head back against the cinder block. "We can't just keep running blind," he said quietly. "It wants us scattered, panicked. We need somewhere dull. No glass. No mirrors." "The cemetery?" Jess asked again. Her voice shook, but she was trying to sound practical. "Cemetery's good," Mrs. K said. "Old stone trees. No shine." "Too far," Mason said. "Bus depot's closer. Brick bathrooms, no glass." We looked at each other, and it was like drawing straws with our eyes. Bus depot made sense. 3 blocks, no big windows or roof. "We move fast," I said. "Eyes down. If you see movement outside, hide immediately. We don't check phones. We don't check reflections. We don't stop." Paul pushed himself upright. "I can walk." He met my eyes, soldier to soldier, and I knew he was telling me he'd keep moving until he dropped. We unlatched the door and spilled out into heavy summer air. The street was still. The shimmer had gone or gone invisible. We moved single file, hugging brick, avoiding puddles. Every storefront window got a wide berth. A kid's bike on the sidewalk reflected a glint. Jess kicked it aside before anyone could glance. Halfway there a new sound came. Not humming, but a dry scraping, like paper tearing in long sheets. We didn't turn. We kept our eyes on the road. The newcomers whimpered but followed. Mason counted steps under his breath like a charm. Then Ava, sweet brave Ava, dropped her stuffed llama. It hit pavement with a soft sound and rolled just enough to show the plastic eyes. She lunged after it. Jess dove first, grabbing the girl by the back of her shirt, hauling her up before her gaze hit those shiny little eyes. I scooped the llama without looking, stuffed it under my shirt to kill the glint. "No shiny toys," I said, as gentle as I could in a voice that felt shredded. We hit the bus depot's side entrance. Rusted steel door, no window. Perfect. Mason shoved it open, and we tumbled inside. It was dim, cool, and blessedly dull. Cinderblock walls, old schedules curling off cork boards, dusty benches. We collapsed as one organism, panting. For a long minute no one spoke. We listened. Just wind through broken vents, our ragged breathing, distant groan of metal cooling. Jess leaned against me, forehead to my shoulder. "We made it." "For now," I said, because truth matters now more than comfort. Paul slid down a wall, bleeding but alive. The newcomers sobbed quiet relief. Mrs. K whispered a prayer. Ava tucked the llama under her hoodie, so only fabric showed. We started making the space safe. We ripped down every glossy poster and flipped every schedule face-in. We covered the old ticket booth glass with duct tape and black paint. We stacked benches across the doors. It was work, and work kept the terror from boiling over. When we were done, Jess looked around and nodded once, decisive. "This is better." I nodded back. "It'll hold." For a moment, we were just survivors catching breath. Mason started laughing, shaky but real, at nothing and everything. Ava giggled once, quick and brave.